You have probably heard about preppers, the group of people who prepare for the end of civilization, who build bunkers, who stockpile food and either items, especially guns in the United States, lots and lots of guns. Myself, I'm sometimes watching videos of such a person, and for him the apocalypse and the fall of civilization seems to be like a way of life, and I also suspect a business. The behavior of these people talks more about themselves than about how our civilization might fall or collapse. However, some scientists actually take into consideration the possibility of a collapse of the modern human civilization, and they studied this scientifically. Now, the field is called collapsology, and is a term that comes from French, collapsology. The term in French. Collapsology is a transdisciplinary field of study that explores the potential collapse of human civilization. Because societies and complex systems, society is a complex system, are subject to collapse. And it is important to understand the risks and the potential consequences of a collapse and to prepare and mitigate them. Now, the term was promoted by two French scientists in their book How Everything Can Collapse, a manual for our times, where they discuss the topic of collapse. They are also a relevant organization that focus on somehow on similar topics. I would mention here the Center for the Study of Existential Risk, a research center at the University of Cambridge, who is intending to study the possible extinction level threats posed by the present or future technology. There is also the Future of Humanity Institute from the University of Oxford, where they look into humanity's future and its prospect. Now, in the German-speaking world, there is the Center for Apocalyptic and Post-Apocalyptic Studies at the Heidelberg University that fosters a transdisciplinary research on how crises and collapses of systems affect societies, individuals, and environments. But what is a collapse of a human civilization? Well, a collapse would mean the decrease in the complexity of the global society over a few decades at most. Now, if this would take longer, we would probably talk about the decline, not about the collapse of civilization. Such a phenomenon would happen due to factors such as inequality, oligarchy, climatic change, environment degradation, pandemics, decrease on energy return, and other existential risks that humanity might face. Or I suspect it might be a combination of them. It would not be just one factor. Now, for every one of us, such an event would mean that our basic needs, such as water, food, housing, energy, transport, security, education, medical services, would be unavailable. That will result probably into wars, famine, crime, health emergency, and so on. This also would lead probably to a drop in the number of the human population. Now, the critics of collapsology argue that collapsologists are overly pessimistic and fatalistic, and that it may lead to a sense of hopeless and inaction. According to them, the collapsologists are playing on the genuine and legitimate fears by keeping packed out public lectures. They use shock-up techniques to shake up public debates and deliver their message through hard-hitting videos destined to go viral on social media. While they have their good points, I would still argue that the basic issue still stands. We still have a big impact on our ecosphere, and this might trigger some feedback loops in the natural world that we would be unable to manage in a reasonable way. And also our power increases. The bigger problems and issues that we'll face will not be natural ones, but the anthropic ones, the one that we are creating. And this is obvious looking at the global warming today, at the pandemic that just ended, the possibility of nuclear winter, and so on. Events that are created or can be created by us and not by nature necessarily. Now, people have always been fascinated with the end of a civilization. You can find in all the culture of the world myths of destruction, of apocalypse, and this is maybe related with some ancient catastrophic event that had such a major impact on our ancestors that they were enabled in our most important stories and myths. And I also think that actually we are aware deep in ourselves that everything that has a beginning must have an end, even our civilization. Collapsology or apocalypse, it's also present in today's culture. In art, through novels, through documentaries, songs, games, movies, and here you can find a lot of them, good and bad. And most of them are more about us and about our fears than about how our civilization might actually collapse. Now, today, during times of great changes, this subject seems to be more on people's mind, as a poll made by a French foundation in 2019 suggested. And they found out that the majority of people, with the notable exception of Germans, believe that civilization will collapse in the future years. And if we look around today, we can see why. There are fires, there are earthquakes, there are wars, pandemic just ended, there are global economical crisis. Now the rich and the ultra-rich also seem to prepare themselves for some kind of global catastrophe. Buying bunkers, that some worth more than 50 million pounds, preparing their escape to New Zealand, seen as a relatively safe place in such of a case, or even preparing to build up a backup civilization on Mars, where some might escape. If most of us would like to avoid such an event, you might be surprised to find out that there are actually people who would like and welcome this. Or maybe they are even working towards the collapse of human civilization. Who are these people? I would mention just three categories. First of all, they are the extreme ecologists, the anarchic ecologists, who see humanity as a cancer on the face of this planet, and they want this disease eradicated. Another group is composed by some Christian fundamentalists who would welcome an apocalypse, since this would mean for them the second return of Christ. I would also mention a special group, a group of people who see this civilization already doomed. So anyway, what does it matter? They want to end it as fast as possible and build another one in accordance with their vision. As you might notice, I have given so far several definitions of this concept of collapse. They're all true and they're all somehow different. Why is that? Because such an event would be extremely complex and it would have seen and unseen ramification in all aspects of our life. But the important question is, could this happen? I think that it might happen. And I think that the more we continue on this path that we are today, the higher are the chances of this happening. But nowadays we live in a globalized world, so the collapse would not be a local collapse like in the past, it would be a global collapse. We are somehow very high as a civilization comparing with other civilizations in the past. And as the saying goes, the higher you climb, the harder you fall. Is there a future for us as a species after such a collapse? Well, depends on how all is going to fall. But maybe we are lucky enough to avoid it. Time will tell.